morning. I'd like to talk a little bit about how implementing new technology can actually impact recruiting, training, and retaining election workers. In November of 2015, Hamilton County, Ohio implemented electronic poll books for the first time in a countywide election. And we anticipated there would be some minor technical glitches and a learning curve for the poll workers as the technology was new. However, those technical glitches and the learning curve for the poll workers rose to a level that was unacceptable. And it really left a little bit of a black eye on Hamilton County Board of Elections and our poll workers. So with the presidential primary election just 4 months away after the November election, there was little time to correct the problem. We focused on two aspects. One was fixing the technical glitches, and the other was improving our poll worker recruiting and training. Fixing the technical glitches actually ended up being the easier of the two. Thorough testing revealed that there was a simple hardware defect in the router. We replaced all the routers and did some minor tweaking on our checklists, and those issues were resolved. However, the learning curve for the poll workers was a little more challenging. We decided to attack that challenge by focusing our efforts on the two areas I mentioned before, training and recruiting. We tweaked our training curriculum to provide more hands-on breakout sessions and decided to train all poll workers on all processes. We realized in the November election that sometimes the poll worker that we may have trained specifically for certain duties may not be as comfortable with the technology as another poll worker that we had trained on different duties. We developed and instituted a pass-fail test at the end of the poll worker class. If the poll worker failed the test, he or she could choose to retake the class and the test a second time. We also implemented something called Practice Makes Perfect, and we allowed the individual poll workers to come down to the Board of Elections after their formal training and just practice at an e-poll book. We set up numerous devices with different voting scenarios, and the poll workers could just practice over and over again until they felt completely comfortable with the process. Recruiting and retaining poll workers is never an easy task, and new technology, adding new technology to a group of workers whose average age is close to 70 can be a Herculean task. To accomplish our recruitment and retention goals, we launched two programs, Partners in Democracy and Youth at the Booth. Our Partners in Democracy program encourages local government agencies and businesses to give their employees the day off for democracy. By giving their employees the day off with pay, plus the additional poll worker pay, employees had a financial incentive to work the polls. In order to develop these recruitment programs, we knew we needed to develop personal relationships. Simply sending an email or mailing an informational packet is not enough to convince government, and especially business leaders, to give a day off with pay to their employees. So our board created two new full-time recruiter positions to build and maintain those relationships. The Ohio Secretary of State, John Husted, is also assisting local boards of elections in Ohio by assigning a marketing and outreach manager to each board of elections to assist in reaching out to the local business communities. Finally, after each election, our Partners in Democracy are presented with a plaque and are recognized publicly for their partnership. We also quickly realized we needed to recruit younger poll workers who are familiar with today's technology. To the younger generation, comfortability with wireless devices is almost second nature. So we turned to our local high schools. And fortunately in Ohio, 17-year-old high school seniors are allowed to work the polls on Election Day. So that gives us an even greater pool of poll workers in which to recruit from. But this concept was not new to Ohio. Our Youth at the Booth program actually started in the late 1990s, but it just didn't receive a whole lot of attention. However, the introduction of iPads to the election process has sparked a new interest, and teenagers can see how incredibly valuable their technology skill sets are in the election process. And honestly, the local media loved the story. Every news network in Cincinnati ran at least one story about the Youth at the Booth program leading up to the presidential primary in March. We were able to place a high school senior in 50% of our polling locations. And the teenagers received universal praise from their adult counterparts. Their adult counterparts loved having them work with them. And our goal is to place one high school senior in every polling location in the upcoming presidential election. And we hope to unveil a Youth at the Booth challenge at the start of the school year in order to reach that goal. These recruitment efforts are in no way an effort to phase out our older generation poll workers. To the contrary, they are an effort to build the perfect team. We compare the younger generation's familiarity with today's technology, the business community's work experience and customer service experience, with our older generation's knowledge of election procedures to create an ideal group of poll workers. Building a team of poll workers who work well together increases the board's ability to retain those workers for years to come. That concludes my testimony for today. I'd be happy to answer questions.